Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hope you're all well. Welcome to another show, the PTE show or the AJ show. Hope you all been doing good. So I did one of these live shows yesterday and it was pretty successful. So I decided to do another one today. Lucky you. So I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Please say yes if you can hear me. I don't want to go through this live show without any sound. Yesterday had a few bugs, but I like to kind of go through the topics today very quickly with you guys. So I'm just waiting for someone to say yes, you can hear me. Then great, excellent, excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to quickly go through all of the topics today. There you go, guys. All of these topics I'm going to go through with you today. So first of all, you might think, bloody hell, he's got a lot of tabs open. And somebody mentioned this yesterday, saying that I've got a lot of tabs open. Well, let me tell you something, guys. I do a lot of reading throughout the day. I do a lot of YouTube videos viewing. And I do all the research, so you don't have to. So I go through all of the Twitter accounts, I go through YouTube channels, I go through all of these articles, and then I save your time for you guys not to do the same thing as me. So I save a lot of time for you guys. I do all the research and stuff, and this is why I've got a lot of tabs open. I leave it open because these are stuff I haven't finished yet, or I need to get back to, or also to remind me to talk about on the next show. I've got all the tabs open for this show. I know what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm not gonna waste any more time. The link, if you want to join me for a conversation, I've sent you a link on Patreon and Locals. So it makes sense for you guys to join me, and this is one of the benefits that you're welcome to come on the live stream at any time. You don't have to show your face. You can come on and have a chat. You know, there's no pressure. You don't have to show your face. You don't have to have your name. You just come on and just talk about all the things I'm talking about. And there's no pressure whatsoever. Or if you guys are in London or Manchester, I'm happy to meet you guys for a drink. Only for Patreon and local members, though. You know, you guys have been very good supporting me, so I need to kind of give you something back. I need to buy you guys a drink. So without further ado, let's carry on with the show. So I saw this today on Twitter. As you can see, Zelensky is filming a Netflix show on the Kiev underground. The funny thing about this, you know, the West likes to tell the story that Kiev is having all sorts of power outages. The people are freezing. The people can't eat. People are dying. There's no power in Kiev whatsoever. But you can see here, you can see all of the power, all of this equipment. The trains are running. Everything looks fine in Kiev. So I don't know what the hell the West likes. You know, the West loves to kind of make up these stories. So the West feels more sorry for the Ukrainian people. So people send them more money. You know, that's what it's all about. But as you know, with Zelensky, he's a puppet put into this place because he's an actor. He knows how to talk in front of the camera. Even his voice is not even real. When he comes in front of the camera, he's like, "Arr!" He's got really, you know, pretends he's got a really deep voice. You know, his wife is not even real. There's a picture of him in the Vogue magazine with his wife, and he had the ring in the middle finger. I need to show you this, guys. Those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, let me show you. Zelensky Vogue. And this picture here, and you can see here, who puts a ring in the wedding in the middle finger? I don't care what country you are from or what, you know, this is, you don't put the wedding ring in this middle finger. So I don't think that's I don't think it's a real. I think it's just a sham, just like him, just like everything else around him. And you know, when he's not out there begging for money, his wife is doing it. So it just goes to show it's all a sham. I recognize this from watching Iron Man 3, and I realize how they have been treating the Mandarin in that film. So if you get a chance, try and watch Iron Man 3, and you can see exactly what they did with Iron Man 3, they are doing with Zelensky. They're using him as a puppet, and they've promised him all the riches in the world. They're giving him loads of properties around the world. He gets he's actually a millionaire or even a billionaire. So he can't, he can't lose. He's like the perfect puppet. So let's start with some of the stories around the world. Somebody mentioned this to me today. Airbus inks 17 billion plane order with China. And this happened today or yesterday, I believe. And it was coincided with Scholz's trip to China. So you might think, oh, that's a good news. But this is good news for Airbus, but it's definitely not good news for Boeing. Boeing had said a couple of years ago, before all of these trade war happened with China, that they basically had an agreement with the Chinese to sell $1 trillion worth of planes to China. And then suddenly Trump came along, started with this trade war crap. Suddenly China became an enemy, and China stopped buying Boeing airplanes, and also coincided with a few accidents the Boeing airplanes had as well recently. And China has not been buying not even one Boeing airplane since then. So Boeing's shares have been going down while Airbus's shares have been going up. So you might think to yourself, hang on a second, why is China buying Airbus? Because China has already got its own airplane. It's the C919, which China has built locally. Well, the problem is C919 is only certified in China, so they can only travel around in China. And they're not international airplanes, so you can't really take them to Europe or United States. So they need these international certified airplanes to travel around the world. And they're buying it now because, as you know, for the past couple of years, China's been under severe lockdown, and plus the rest of the world as well, with the virus. And they're all getting ready now, basically waiting for China to open up. And once they're opening up, they will see a lot of heavy traffic, planes going all over the world, taking passengers back and forth to China from China. So they need to be prepared for that. And this is why they're buying a lot of Airbus planes. And I'm going to be talking about the C91, but maybe later on in another show or something. So let's carry on with the rest of the stuff today. So I saw this story how a US Navy Admiral, Charles Richard, basically was coming on and saying that America is falling behind China in terms of nukes. China is building nukes at a really fast rate. And he's warned that further investment in the US military is needed in the face of rising threats. And he's basically saying that, America is falling behind. They needed deterrence, they needed defense against Chinese nukes. And it's a big worry, apparently. So the problem we have is China is not only building nukes at a really fast rate, they are building missiles. And you can see here, 3D printed missile parts speed up production in China. And China has got the biggest manufacturing capability in the world. So they are probably churning out missiles like nobody's business. They are probably churning them out, literally hundreds, if not thousands per week or per month, and they're using 3D printed technology, and you can imagine some of them will be nukes as well. China does have a huge nuclear industry. There's a lot of nuclear power plants coming online in China as well in the next few years. So they have a lot of nuclear capability. Right now, it is said that they've got around 300 to 400 nukes, but secretly, I think it's more than that. They're saying that China could have up to 1,000 nukes by 2030, but I think it's going to be probably double that, to be honest. So this is the problem that US has got. When you have Russia, who has got 6,000 nukes, and most of it is probably pointed at United States, some of it's pointed at Europe, and then you have up and coming China, which has got 1,000 to 2,000 nukes 20 by 2030. By 2040, they could easily double that. So you can see the problem that United States has. The United States cannot, cannot keep up with both these countries at the same time. So if Russia has 6,000 nukes, United States obviously has about 6,000 nukes, so they're probably all pointing at Russia. So if China suddenly has 6,000 nukes by 2060, for example, so America will have to build another 6,000 nukes to point at China. So can you see where this is going? If Russia decides to build up its nuclear arsenal from 6,000 to 10,000, and China does the same, United States will have to build 20,000. So can you see where it's going? The numbers is just not going to add up, and it's the United States which is going to suffer because they're going to have to pay more to build all of these nukes to keep up, and they cannot keep up with these superpowers of nukes when it comes to Russia and China. And don't forget, the defensive capabilities now is a lot more difficult than it was during the Cold War. And the Cold War, you can say the United States has a pretty good defense. They had very good anti-ballistic missiles and stuff like that. But right now, they have no answer to hypersonic weapons, hypersonic missiles coming from Russia, coming from China. Literally, they have no defense whatsoever. And not only that, Russia as well as China has got a capability. They call it the nuclear triad. So they have a capability to use nukes in various different ways. So, for example, they call it a nuclear triad because you need to deliver nukes and by the sea, by land, and by air. And this is why they call it a triad. So Russia always had a very good nuke triad, and they've got bombers, they got a long range missiles. They've had it for a long time, and plus they've got really good submarines. China has recently built this triad, and if not, they will have the triad very soon. So they've got the subs, nuclear subs. They've got obviously the land-based missiles, but very soon China's going to be releasing a ship called the H-20. And the H-20 is China's version of the B-21 bomber or the B-2 bomber that United States has, the stealth bomber. And that's going to be a huge game changer. And that's going to provide China with the third triad to be able to deliver it by sea, by air, and by land. And that's going to be a huge headache for United States. And this is why they're worried. And this is why this guy is basically throwing his toys out the pram and crying about it. And it's a big major worry for the United States. So then you have North Korea as well. And I love this picture, by the way. It looks, I don't know if you guys seen the video where he looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger superstar with the missile behind him and he's like walking around. So North Korea is very close to doing a nuclear test, and the United States has been trying to put more sanctions on North Korea. China and Russia have so far said no in the United Nations, and America obviously has been very unhappy that Beijing and Moscow has been trying to stop sanctions against North Korea. So North Korea has been is actually very close to having a nuclear test, and that's going to be a major game changer because North Korea has been a problem for the United States for a long time, and they've pretty much ignored it until now. Back then, before Trump came along, North Korea was the big problem of the world, and United States was really worried about North Korean nuclear missiles. But it's one of those problems where they thought, if they brush it under the carpet, maybe it will go away. But it's not gone away. It's gotten worse. North Korea has actually been building its nuclear missile deterrent, and right now they've got up to 100 nuclear missiles, enough to completely destroy South Korea and Japan even. And yeah, so obviously Japan's worried, South Korea's worried, United States is very worried. And they needed the help of the Chinese, they needed the help of the Russians to kind of calm this situation down. But the way things are going right now, they can forget any help from China, they can forget any help from Russia. It's not happening. So while everything's going on, North Korea will continue to, do their missile tests, continue to build its nuclear deterrent. And South Korea is very, very worried, obviously. Technically, that war between North Korea and South Korea is still going on. And North Korea have got the capability to completely destroy South Korea if a war ever happens. And as you know, South Korea is very rich compared to the North Koreans, but North Koreans do have the nuclear weapons and South Korea don't. But South Korea do have a very good military. They have been building up their conventional weapons, very good ones, and they are selling it all over the world as well. So they are very good. Unfortunately, they're no use against nuclear weapons. So whenever there is a war between the two, you know which one is going to win more first. Obviously, if that happens, if that ever happens, then United States does have the capability to launch nukes against North Korea. Obviously, they do, but China's not going to be standing by idly while United States hits North Korea and its borders. And North Korea's borders are Chinese borders. So China's not going to be sitting by idly watching nukes going along its borders. So China may be forced to retaliate. So that area is still very much a problem which is not solved. Could be a future issue. But right now, at the moment, United States is focusing on Russia, focusing on China. They've completely forgotten about North Korea. But once North Korea starts doing their nuke tests, I'm sure all of the world's eyes are going to point back to North Korea, and people are going to be like, "Oh crap! What do we do now?" So you might think to yourself, "What the hell is North Korea doing with nukes?" Well, let me tell you something. Because North Korea has nukes, this is why they have been able to survive as long as they have. If they did not have nukes, you can guarantee that United States and South Korea would have taken over North Korea by now. They would have invaded, they would have started the war. They would have done it a long time ago. Because look what happens to the rest of the world. Libya, Colonel Gaddafi gave away his nuke program, and the whole West was clapping at the time, saying, "Yeah, well done, General Gaddafi. You've given up your nuke program." And a few years later, they start bombing Libya, and we all know what happened to Gaddafi after that. He's obviously, the way he died, it was absolutely disgusting. And you had Hillary coming on national television, waving her arms up in the air, saying, "Yeah, we came, we saw, we conquered," and all of that crap. You've seen what happened to Iraq. If Iraq, I believe, made a big mistake going into Kuwait. If they had nukes, then they went into Kuwait, then the West would not have gone in. They would have thought twice before they went in. But because Iraq didn't have any nukes, obviously the West went in, destroyed Iraq once, twice. And this is the same problem Iran is having right now. And the only closing grace that Iran has is the West is not sure if Iran has nuclear weapons or not. We all believe that probably secretly they are building nuclear weapons, and they probably have at least one or two secretly. They have the capability. They obviously have the capability. Everyone knows that. And the United States is now freaking out with Iranian nukes in Ukraine, and this just shows how advanced here you go. This just shows how advanced the Iranian military has come over the past few years. That their drones are basically used in the in the Russian-Ukrainian war, and the whole world is talking about it. You see, you have Zelensky now basically complaining about it, and recently Iranians have actually admitted that those drones that Russia is using is Iranian drones. And you can see here it comes after Iran admitted for the first time those supplied drones to Moscow, but they only supplied it before the invasion. So yeah, they probably supplied these drones before the invasion, but I believe Russia probably has some sort of deal with them, some sort of technology transfer, and they probably have Iranian scientists in Russia mass producing these drones in Russia under some sort of license. So that's probably what's happening. So the West is pretty much freaking out with Iran. They don't know if Iran has secretly got a nuclear bomb or not. Otherwise, that's the only reason they haven't gone into Iran. The reason they're blowing up Syria, because they know Syria has got no weapons, no nuclear weapons, no chemical weapons, no biological ones. So they're going in and out of Syria doing whatever they want. So the whole point is, if you're a poor country, you don't have nuclear weapons, you don't have anything to defend yourself, the West will come in and blow you to smithereens, and they will change regimes or they will kill you. But if you've got nuclear weapons, North Korea has shown they will leave you alone. They will leave you alone. They won't say anything. In fact, they'll be quite scared of you. And that's basically what the lesson North Korea is showing. And it's also the lesson in the Middle East. And I mean, look what happened to Gaddafi, Saddam. You just have to look at history. The West will only pick on you if they know they can beat you, and you've got nothing to defend yourself with. I mean, the second Iraq war was an absolute joke. Second Iraq war, the Afghanistan war was an absolute joke. The Taliban had no means to defend themselves. And in the second Iraq war, the Iraqis literally had no weapons at all. Everything was dismantled after the first Iraq war. The West knew that Iraq at the second time had nothing to defend themselves with. So they knew they can go in, steal Iraq's treasures, their oil, get away with it, and it will be an easy war for them with minimum casualties. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, but you can imagine what they have thought at the time. So what do you guys think so far? Everyone okay? Just going to check up on these messages, make sure you guys are all good. Don't forget, you're welcome to join in anytime if you're locals or Patreon, and just seeing if there's any interesting questions. If not, then I'm going to carry on, guys. Let me carry on. So I'm going to talk about this in a bit. First of all, I want to show you this clip where Biden vows a free Iran. I remembered I can't actually show you any clips because there's still issues with the sound. But Biden admitted he's doing everything he can to completely destroy Iran with all the protests and stuff going on. So if you can't bomb Iran, there's always other ways like color revolutions and Arab Springs and protests. So that's obviously what they're trying to do in Iran at the moment. And you can see Biden actually coming on and saying he wants to free Iran. So obviously they know they can't bomb Iran, so they're going to try and look for things the other way. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to talk about this chip war that's happening. And I know a lot about the kind of all of these chips and all of this equipment that's being used, the DUV and the EUV. I've done a lot of research about it. So recently, United States has put some, as part of the bill, put some limits in who they can sell their chips to, and right now is only kind of directed at American companies. But what they're trying to do now is they're also trying to force the Netherlands and Japan to follow the same kind of bans as well, not to sell chips to China. And you might think that Japan and Netherlands are following the United States calling, but they're not. They're absolutely not. And you can see from this article, they're not. They're trying to push these countries to follow their line, because the way the United States think, whenever they put any sanctions on a country, they don't want to suffer by themselves. They rather their allies suffer at the same time. And this is what's happening with Russia. They get all the collective West to apply sanctions on Russia. They don't want to do it themselves. And this is what they're doing with China as well. So you can see with this article, US President Joe Biden appears to pressure Japan and the Netherlands even more to join efforts to block the flow of advanced chip technology to China, where it could be used to develop cutting-edge weapons. So it says here, I think you will see Japan and Netherlands will follow our lead, US Commerce Secretary Gino Raimondo said. So she said that she says, I think. It's not, when somebody says I think, it usually means they're not sure. So you can see here, US companies are in strong software used in chips, as well as design software employed to make advanced semiconductors. South Korean and Taiwanese companies handle many products that use US technology, which already is a subject to certain regulation. Japan and Netherlands are subject of US attention because of their strength in semiconductor manufacturing equipment, which so far has not been subject to US regulations. Companies in both countries believe to be able to build products that do not rely on US technology. So the whole point is the US is trying to get their allies to block chip making equipment and also chips to China. And let me show you some things that's happening to the United States right now, and also TSMC. I mean, look at the shares of TSMC, how far it has gone down, especially last few months. You can see NVIDIA, how the shares have gone down, and you can see probably AMD is probably the worst. It went from 160 at one point. Now it's down to 59 or 60. So you can see the United States do not want to suffer by themselves, so they're trying to get their allies to suffer with them. The Chinese industry is a huge industry, and China has been paying up to $400 billion per year for chips, mainly from United States, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan. 400 billion they pay per year. So it's a huge market. And now United States is trying to stop these chip companies from basically selling to China. And the reason American companies are suffering is because you have these major companies who normally sell chips to China. And as you know, China is the largest manufacturing country in the world. They make everything, IoT devices, laptops, mobiles, every single thing. And most of it is electrical. So everything needs chips. And these American companies are now struggling to kind of sell their most advanced chips. And their most advanced chips are used for computers and other advanced things in China. And the United States is trying to stop all that. And this is why their shares are going down, because if you cannot sell to your biggest market, your share as a company is going to go down, and you'll have less money, less revenues. That means you're going to have to let people go. Yes, there's going to be less jobs, and there's going to be less money for research and development. So it just doesn't make any sense why US is doing that to its business and its companies. And also, let me tell you something. If you are a company who is using US technology for chips, and the US is going to try and control you, they're going to tell you where to sell, where not to sell, what to do. They're going to try and control you, say, oh, this is our technology. You can't sell to China. You can't do this. You can't do that. You as a company, you're in a serious position, because you can't run your business as you would normally in a free trade environment. So what you're going to do in the long term, you're going to try and find ways to get away from US technology. So all of these companies in Netherlands, like ASML, companies in Japan, they're going to find ways to not to use US technology. And this is what it says here. You can see here, companies in both countries are believed to be able to build products that do not relying on US technology. So even though these companies in Japan, even though the companies in Netherlands are not using US technology, United States is still trying to force them not to sell to China. I mean, good luck to that. Let's see how that works. I mean, it says that, if you're a friend of the United States, then it's fatal. And they said if you're an enemy, then it's dangerous. But if you're a friend, it's fatal. This is exactly what it's like. American, the United States is now going around the world telling countries who to sell to, who not to sell to. It doesn't matter if you're using US technology or not. You got to listen to me, or else you're either with us or against us. And this is how it is at the moment. And the long term, companies around the world are going to look at this, think, you know what, guys, screw this American technology. We'll build our own technology. Let's build something that doesn't use US technology, because we don't want them to come around knocking on our door saying, oh, you're using our technology. You're not allowed to sell to China. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. So the long term is not looking good for United States, because these companies are going to find ways not to use US technology, and they'll sell to whoever they want. I mean, good luck if the United States come around knocking on your door and say, oh, you can't sell to China. And if you say, why not? Oh, because we don't like them, and you are using our technology. And that's what companies are doing now, saying, no, we're not using your technology. This is our technology. This is our patent. So get the hell out. You can't tell me what to do. So this is what's going to be happening in the future. Companies are going to be pushing to get away from United States technology. And I haven't even started about China. I haven't even started what this is going to be doing to China. This is going to fast track Chinese development, because this is China is spending up to 400 billion on chips. So if they can invest most of that money into their own chip development and build up their own ecosystem, and in a few years they don't have to be controlled by United States or threatened with these chip builds and stuff like that. And if you're a company in China, and if all of these US companies are banned from selling to China, these Chinese companies will come up, get a lot of funding from the Chinese government, and in a few years they'll be able to sell to their own market. And eventually these Western companies will be thrown out. And this is what's happened in China. If you just look at the history, for example, at one point China was not allowed to compete or go into the International Space Station. I don't know why it's called International Space Station, because United States, it's only for United States, its allies. So it's not really international. It's basically, if you're a friend of the United States and you basically are a puppet of the United States, then you'll be allowed to go into the International Space Station. Otherwise, you're not. So China at one point were not allowed to go into the International Space Station, and China decided to build their own. And now they have surpassed the United States in so many ways. They've got their new space station. They're looking to build a base on the moon with Russia. So they're well ahead of the United States in many aspects. And right now they are behind in the chip sector, but it's not going to take them long to catch up. And I'm going to kind of talk about how. I'm going to show you some facts and figures over the next few slides. So this article, you can see why China's big chip breakthrough has rattled the US. So the reason the US is doing all of this is because there's a company in China who has built a 7-nanometer semiconductor, and they are selling that to companies. And I believe it's basically they're selling it to they're already selling it to a company, and this 7-nanometer is a huge issue for United States, and they are completely shocked, because they did not think that China has the capability to build 7 nanometers. And this has come at a really fast rate as well, because if you think about Chinese development, China has only developed over the last 20, 30 years, or 20 or 30 years. Before that, they were very poor. They didn't really have much of a technology sector. It wasn't until they joined the World Trade Organization and all of these companies started moving into China, and China started doing lots of joint ventures. They started doing a lot of technology transfers, and China obviously built their own technology and learned from these Western companies, and started building their own and developing their own technologies. And now look how fast they have built up their technologies over the past 20 or 30 years. And this is completely legal, guys. I mean, people that, United States like to kind of throw some stories around that, China stole technology, this and that. Nobody stole technology. All these American companies, nobody put a gun to these American companies that went to China and decided to do these joint ventures with China. No, nobody put a gun to their heads. Basically, these companies wanted to go to China because there was cheap labor, cheap goods, everything was cheap, and they left American shores and decided to build up their factories in Chinese shores. They didn't have any problems about sharing technology with the Chinese back then, because they still thought at the time China was not capable of innovation and Chinese people were not capable of innovation. So these companies were going around, you know, doing technology transfers, and it's all legal, it's all above board. And Chinese, they learned from that and they've built their own industry. And like I said, nobody put a gun to these companies' heads to go all the way to China. They did it for the money because they know going to China will save them a lot of costs. And this is how capitalism works. When these companies have so much power and all they want is to save costs. And if they can save 1p or 2p making these products, they will do it. They don't care about the people of the United States or the government. They only care about money. So obviously China has built up its technology over the past 20, 30 years very, very fast. And I'm giving you an example as a space station, but there's many examples how China has developed its own technology. They've managed to build their own jet engine. They've managed to build their own 5th generation fighter. They've managed to build their own airplane. And, there's many examples, guys, many examples. They build their own solar sector, the wind generation, AI. I'm going to probably do a separate video on it to kind of show you the kind of technological advances that China has made over the years. But this really has freaked out the United States, because China was able to sell the 7 nanometers to other companies, and this really has freaked them out. And this is why couple of weeks later, you see this bill coming out, and they're trying to put more sanctions on China to kind of stop them. But it's not going to stop them. It is. It's actually going to push China to kind of do better, because the way the Chinese look at this, they feel absolutely humiliated the way the United States is treating them. And this is going to push the Chinese even more to work harder. And you got 1.4 billion people in China, basically all with the same kind of mentality. They all want to kind of be better. They know the United States has put these illegal sanctions on them, so they want to kind of make sure China does not fall. China actually gets past them. And Chinese people work hard, and also a lot of Chinese that have been working abroad, like in United States, also are moving back into the mainland as well. So they've got a lot of skills that they have been building up in the West, and now a lot of them are going back into China, which I'm going to kind of cover in the next few slides later on. But in the beginning, let's kind of carry on. So this is what America's been doing. You can see America must beware of backing China into a corner. So this is what happens when you back an animal into a corner. They have no choice but to fight back, and United States is giving China no choice but to fight back. If you go back before the Trump era, before Trump placed these sanctions, China was happy to buy chips worth 400 billion, 500 billion. They were happy to pay that amount. They did not build their own, semiconductor industry because the whole world at the time was working together. They had a supply chain that was working throughout the world. You know, companies were buying goods from all over the world, and every country had its own advantage. People were exporting, importing. The whole world was working like clockwork. And if you don't believe me, watch a film called 2012. And 2012 is a film about the end of the world, how the sea levels rise and destroy the world. And back then, the Chinese were the good guys. And this was 2012, this film is called. So just over 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there was no problem with the Chinese whatsoever because the Americans were too busy fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. They were too busy killing Muslims. They weren't even thinking about the Chinese back then. So 2012, basically, the world is ending. And the Americans decided to work with the Chinese, and the Chinese built these arcs, these massive ships, and they built it by, destroying mountains in Tibet and stuff. They built it, and America provided the technology. And it's kind of one of those things where the whole world kind of worked together. They built these arcs. Every country kind of contributed to that arc, and it's like a real international space station where every country in the world kind of put something in it. And they built these arcs, massive arcs, and they built it in the Tibetan mountains, because the Tibetan mountains, they call it the roof of the world, because in terms of, those mountains are literally the highest point on Earth. And if the Earth ever got flooded, that is where you need to be, because those Tibetan mountains are very, very high. And obviously, about the Everest mountain, but there's other mountains as well around the Tibetan area, which are very, very high. And, if the world is sinking, that's the place to go. So they built them there. They built these 3 arcs, and it just kind of shows how the world kind of worked together, what the strengths of the Chinese are, what the strengths of the Americans are, and they kind of work together, and they built these arcs, and at the end of the day, a lot of important people went into those arcs, and humanity was saved. Even though the world was destroyed, humanity was saved. And eventually the water went down, and when the water went down, humanity rebuilt itself again. So the whole point is, when you work together as a collective, the world wins. It's a win-win situation for everyone. But when you don't, then it's just a lose-lose for everyone. And this is what's happening. America is backing China into a corner, and China has got no choice but to fight. And they're fighting by building up their own semiconductor industry. Before Trump, they did not need a semiconductor industry. They didn't feel they had to. They were happily buying stuff from rest of the world, and there was no issues. It wasn't until Huawei got banned and the Chinese realized that we need to have our own semiconductor industry, because the Americans can place these sanctions on us, on any company at any point, and destroy the company or any country by doing that. So it wasn't until then China decided to build their own semiconductor industry, and they are building it. It's going to take time. I'm not saying this is something they can do overnight. It probably will take between 5 to 10 years, but this is a very slow process. You have to think about building the whole ecosystem. It's not just about building the chips, it's building the ecosystem. You need to be able to build the machines. You need to have the right people with the right skills. You need to have all the raw materials. You need to have companies making the glass, the mirror, the laser. There's a lot of components that goes into building these lithography machines, and a lot of technology goes into it. So it's not something you can do overnight. You need a lot of time for this. But think about it, guys. I mean, 7 nanometers was something that the world, like Intel, was selling like 10 years ago. But how long has Intel been around? Intel has been around for ages. I think I remember Intel has been around. Is one of the first companies which invented the chip, and that was way back. I can't remember the exact date, but let's say 60, 70, 80 years ago, probably 1950s, 94. I don't know, but Intel's been around for ages, and it took them that long to come up with 7 nanometers, but it took China like 10 years to get up to 7 nanometers. So you have to think about it in that sense. China is very new to this semiconductor market, but they are going along very fast. And I wouldn't be surprised if over the next 5 years they start going beyond 7 nanometers, start building EUV machines themselves, or other technologies like photonic chips or graphene chips, and overtake what's already on the market. So this article says, broader ban on ASML sales to China will hurt firms' revenue and set back Beijing's domestic chip making drive, analysts say. And it says ASML could lose around 2 billion in revenue if deep DUV technology sales in China are blocked. So the United States is trying to stop DUV technology because it was previously ASML was not allowed to sell EUV machines, but they were allowed to sell DUV machines because the United States thought DUV machines were not the latest generation, so it's fine to sell them. But imagine their shock when China came out with 7 nanometers with DUV machines, and this is why DUV machines are now banned. And ASML obviously they're not happy being told what to do by the United States. Obviously, their revenue is going to be going down. The bad news is China is actually building its own DUV machine, and I believe that's going to be out over the next few years as well. And there's a company called SMEE, and SMEE is a company which is building its own DUV machine, and that's going to be out very, very soon. AMD, you can see that bad news adds to 725 billion market drop for big chip makers. So AMD, as well as other US firms and Taiwanese firms and South Korean firms, they're going to be losing up to 725 billion, and that's a lot of money. You got to. This is not we're not looking at small change here. China is the biggest market at the moment. And the reason is they said it's 725 billion. Obviously, China was buying 400, 500 billion a few years ago. The reason now it's 725 billion because the rise of IoT machines, the rise of EV cars. We are living in the technological age where everything needs a semiconductor, everything needs a chip. Your fridge needs a chip. Everything you work with, everything is smart. Everything is smart. You can have a smart home where everything has a semiconductor, everything you can control with your phone, everything you can control with your voice. We are living in a smart world. So obviously, because of that huge demand of chips, this is why, they're going to lose a lot more than what they thought they would lose. So there's a company called SMIC, and SMIC has been building factories in China, and they are building, obviously, they have built 7 nanometers, and they're also building 14 nanometers and 28 nanometers. And they are building 3 factories, by the way, 3 new factories. So this one is in Shenzhen. I wanted to kind of show you these factories. So this one is in Shenzhen for 2.35 billion, and the government is helping funding that. So, and you can see this is in Shenzhen here. And then you have another one in Shanghai. So SMIC is building another 8.87 billion into Shanghai. And they are also building another one, which has been recently announced, 7.5 billion factory in Tianjin. And what a lot of people don't realize or don't understand is 80 or 90% of the chips that are sold around the world are mature chips. And we're talking about 28 nanometers, 14 nanometers, or even 7 nanometers. And SMIC can produce that. So if they can build all of these factories in China, and they will be earning so much revenue because they will be owning 70, 80, 90% of the market. And this is bad news for American companies, because if the SMIC takes all the share, all the market in China for these mature nodes, then the American companies are going to be losing out, because before SMIC came along, it was American companies, American chip companies, who were selling in the Chinese market like crazy. And this is why China had to pay 400 billion, 500 billion per year on chips. But obviously now it's going to go up to 700 billion. So imagine all of that money these American companies would lose once these factories come online for SMIC. And if you haven't got shares in SMIC, I'll probably suggest you guys kind of invest in SMIC, because their shares are going to be shooting up over the next few years. It's very cheap at the moment because they are under sanctions. But I can imagine their shares, they're going to be shooting up once these factories are online. And I was talking about the company called SMEE, and you can see SMEE is very close to making a DUV machine. And basically, what it says here is, Chinese lithography equipment maker SMEE is reportedly working on a new ARF immersion lithography tool that could, with multiple patterning, be used to make 7 nanometers chips. So if ASML do not sell these lithography machines to China, guess what? SMEE will come into the market and they will sell these lithography machines in China. So ASML will be losing a huge market. And if SMEE can kind of sell these machines in China, they will be producing their revenue. And with that revenue, they'll obviously be putting more money into research and development. They'll be hiring more staff. And they'll be able to kind of improve on what they have and start building more advanced EUV machines. And this is just a start, guys, because at the end of the day, you've got to start somewhere. As a company, if you can make a lot of revenue, if you can make a lot of business, if you can sell a lot of stuff in your own market, then you will get the funding from the government, you will get the backing, you will get the people, you will get the money, and you'll be able to kind of improve on what you have. And this is how it works. End of the day, once the American businesses are out, the Chinese businesses will take over and they will develop their own industry. And this is what's happening in Russia. You can see Russia, all of these companies are moving out of Russia, but they are being replaced by Russian companies. And locally, that's only a good thing for Russia. Also, Chinese companies are moving as well. So the bad news for TSMC, and this is coming from the Taipei Times. So I just want to say this is Taipei Times, because this is not a fake article, because I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, and somebody said, "Oh, this is a fake." So how can it be fake if it's coming from the Taipei Times? And Taipei Times is obviously from Taiwan, and they know TSMC better than anyone. And Taipei Times is saying that companies like NVIDIA, AMD are cutting orders because they're not selling in China. They're cutting orders, and TSMC is forced to shut down their EUV machines. And you can see here, the order cut has led to TSMC shut down 4 extreme ultraviolet EUV lithography machines, which roll out high-end chips, the report said. So when you have 4 extreme EUV machines shut down, imagine your loss as a company. These EUV machines are bloody expensive. We're talking about, millions and millions, if not like, we're talking about billions if you add all of the everything that comes with it. Let's say billions these machines cost. They're not cheap, and imagine all of these, you pay for like billions worth of equipment and they just sitting around in a warehouse and you're not using them. It's like you're running a football team and you buy the most expensive player, but you don't play him, you just put him on the bench. It's just a waste of money, right? I mean, what is the point? And this is why TSMC is crying at the moment, because if a lot of these companies are cutting orders because they can't sell to China, then the whole supply chain, everything is linked. Even TSMC is going to suffer. So as a company, TSMC, who have spent billions in buying these EUV machines, and now they have to sit on the bench gathering dust, it's not really a good look. And this is why TSMC's shares have been going down. You can see, it's gone down pretty badly. From the heights of 661, it's gone down to around 382. So I want to come to this article now. The US is losing scientists to Asia, to China. How to stem the flow. So this article tells you that in 2021 alone, 1,400 Chinese scientists left the United States for China. Inflow of Chinese students is also on the decline. So this is a major problem. A lot of these US Chinese scientists who have been learning the trade in the United States, they're all now moving back into China, and they're helping the local businesses, helping the local companies build up the tech sector using their skills. And there's a reason for that, which I'm going to go into. And you can see here, increasing number of Chinese researchers leaving the US out of fear. So the previous article was 2021, but if you look at this one tells you a different figure. You can see here, 1,300 Chinese-born faculty members across the country between December 2021 and March 2022 said they have left or leaving the country. And you can see here, around 61% said they feel pressured to leave the country. And this is the problem, really. They are feeling pressured because the Chinese are being heavily victimized in China. And one of the main reasons for that is this guy. So there's a Chinese scientist in United States, and they basically victimized him to death. And you can see how a federal push to stop Chinese scientists from stealing US secrets has spluttered in court. So they basically ruined a Chinese scientist's life, and he basically got acquitted. They threw the case out of court because there was no evidence. And you can see how he was treated here. Investigators secretly surveyed him for more than a year. According to court documents, they seized his electronic devices, they grilled him and his employers. February 2020, FBI arrested him. They took him to jail. They charged him with 6 felonies, could have landed him in prison for decades. But the Justice Department efforts to convict Hu as part of this program to crack down on illicit technology transfer to China failed spectacularly. A judge acquitted him last month after a lengthy trial offered little evidence of anything other than paperwork misunderstanding. So you can see how Chinese scientists in United States are being treated. They are being victimized. And this guy, went through years of FBI surveillance. They put him in jail, treated him like a piece of shit, and they expect all these other Chinese scientists to sit there and take it. And the Chinese community is a very small community. When one thing happens to one person, all the Chinese know about it. Trust me, everyone will know about it. Everyone in China will know about it. All the Chinese around the world will know about it. Because and the way they treated this scientist was absolutely disgusting, And I've seen some of the clips in the courtroom, and the way they were using the language, the way they were using the language against him and the language against China is absolutely disgusting. And this is why a lot of scientists are leaving United States because of fear, because how they get victimized. And you can see how Americans in Chinese tech firms might have to choose between US citizenship and the job. And I will come to this in a bit, but this is the main reasons. They are being victimized. They are leaving out of fear, as you can see, leaving the US out of fear. And I don't blame them. And when they leave the US, the Chinese mainland will open them up, open up with their hands held high, and they'll greet them, they'll give them a super salary, they'll look after them, they'll look after the family. They'll give them a great life compared to the United States, where the FBI will be looking at you, the FBI will be after you, putting you in jail, and things like that. So a lot of scientists, Chinese scientists, are moving back into China. And this is good news for China because this will develop their tech sector much faster. They will have all the skills. But this is bad news for the United States because anybody that works in the tech sector knows that, you know, there's a lot of Chinese in top positions in the tech sector because the Chinese work very hard. A lot of there's a lot of Chinese in the tech sector, and the figures speak for themselves. You're welcome to Google it. There's also big Indian contingent as well, but mainly is Chinese. So all of them are moving back into the mainland, and this is only going to be good for mainland China. One of the other things the United States tried to do is during this chip build that if you're an American, you're working for a Chinese tech firm, you have to choose between US citizenship and the job. And during this chip build, a lot of Americans have been leaving their posts in China or Chinese companies. They felt that they had no choice because they could have left. They didn't want to lose their citizenship. And I think this was a very nasty thing to do. In a court of law, this will not hold. This is something that the government is probably threatening these people to do, but in reality, this will not be whole. This will not go any further in a court of law. There is no way they can kick someone out. They could lose their US citizenship just because of a company they work for or working for a Chinese company. And it's absolutely ridiculous how they are scaremongering people from working in China or working for Chinese companies. And all of this is just going to bite United States back in the arse. All of this stuff, it's not good working environment. It doesn't show that US is welcoming. It doesn't show that US, believes in free trade, freedom to work wherever you want. It doesn't show that the US is playing fair. They're playing very, very nasty, and they're victimizing Chinese working in the United States. They're victimizing people working for Chinese firms, and it just doesn't show US in a good light. And I think all of this is just going to backfire on them. And I believe all of this is an act of desperation because they are absolutely freaking out because China has come to the 7 nanometer level, and slowly they will get to that 5 nanometers and 3 nanometers, and they will catch up with the rest of the world. Like Taiwan at the moment, they are testing their 3 nanometers, which will be in mass production very soon. So 3 nanometers is kind of the place to go. There are other companies like Samsung who have gone to 2 nanometers, I believe. But we'll see. The lower you go, the more expensive it is. So to go from 5 nanometers to 3 nanometers is just so much more expensive. Also, your yields go down. Like when I say yields, like if you build 10 of these chips, you'll find that 5 of them don't work and the other 5 are working fine. That's basically your yield gets worse and worse the lower you go, and so that's a problem really. But as with Moore's law, I believe we are coming to the end of silicon chips. It's getting more and more expensive to kind of go lower and lower when it comes to 3 nanometers or 2 nanometers and 1 nanometer, and it's getting too expensive, guys. And each of these ASML machines costs billions, and it's just not worth it. And how long are you going to last? If somebody finds another way to make these chips cheaper, then all of your billions of investments has just gone down the drain. I believe that there are other ways to make it cheaper. China is focusing on photonic chips, graphene chips. Japan is coming out with a technology next year called NIL. They are building NIL machines which are able to produce 5 nanometers, but It's very, very cheap. The costs are like 1/10 of EUV machines, and also it uses 1/10 of the energy as well. These EUV machines are very energy intensive. They take a lot of energy. They need a lot of water. But Japan is building this NIL machines, and I'm pretty sure, you know, the Chinese are literally waiting in the wings to buy those, because NIL is not using any US technology. It's all Japan technology, and I'm sure Japan will not want to kind of destroy their own business by not selling to the Chinese industry. So they will be selling to China. China will be going to 5 nanometers very soon. They are building their own kind of ecosystem with 5 nanometers, 3 nanometers, even with photonic chips, graphene chips. China is also building up their skills as well. All of their main universities are having semiconductor courses, degrees, and a lot of Chinese students are doing that because they want to help their country. So a lot of students are going into that field, and there's a lot of clever students in that field as well, which are going to be graduating over the next year or two. So China is getting there. They are building their own ecosystem. They're building their own machines. They do not need US technology anymore. And pretty soon they're going to be completely self-sufficient. If you want to bet against them, you're welcome to. But one thing I can guarantee you: never bet against the Chinese. If you push them against a corner, they will fight. They will find a way to get over any problem, whatever it is. So that's all, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Does anyone have any questions? Let me just go up and see if there's anyone. Hope you enjoyed the show. I do talk a lot. It is live, by the way. None of this is scripted, so everything you hear from me is coming straight out of my head. There's a lot of knowledge in my head, so I'm all kind of sharing it with you guys. 320 people. That's not bad. Thanks, everyone. Oh, there's a super sticker. Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate that. Let's see if anyone's got any interesting questions. Let's see. Like I said, if anybody wants to join my local, the Patreons, you're welcome to come on the show, have a chat with me. I'm available anytime. If you're in London or Manchester, you want to meet up with me, I'm happy to kind of meet up with you. But you got to be on my locals, the Patreons. I'm not meeting any strangers, guys, because it's dangerous for me. It's dangerous. There's five eyes looking at me. My work is already on my case, so there could be people. I could be meeting the FBI. I don't know. So I got to make sure I meet my patrons and local members only, and these guys I'm meeting, I've got to make sure I trust them 100%. I'm not going to be stupid enough to meet a stranger. Obviously, it could be anyone. Could be Zelensky's Azov buddy. You never know. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's true. PB. Yeah, there could be a snitch here too, but I'm not really too worried, because end of the day, right? I'm not stupid. I mean, we know, I'm still small fish, and we know we're all kind of, this is the Five Eyes. Everybody is monitored. Some people are monitored more than others, and I am speaking the truth and stuff, but I don't think I'm doing anything which is illegal. I don't think, I am speaking my mind. I'm still pretty much small fish at the moment. I'm still, not even 30K. So even though they might be looking at me, they might be monitoring me. I'm not saying anything that isn't real. I'm not saying anything that isn't out there publicly. You've seen all the articles I've kind of showed you. I mean, everything is out there on public. I'm just repeating everything that is out there. I'm just kind of picking all the truths and putting it out there. I'm not too much of a danger. Like if you compare me to Assange, for example, Assange actually was able to get all of these WikiLeaks, kind of get all these secret documents and videos and stuff. It's nothing like that. So obviously, I'm not worried about anything like that. But what I am worried about is, you know, you have people like Graham Phillips who has been sanctioned. And Graham Phillips is a British reporter, and if they feel like I'm a big danger to UK, and in terms of, if I'm a big security risk, and if they sanction me, then I'm done for. Because if you're sanctioned in UK, you will lose your home, you will lose your bank account, you will lose all your money. That's it. Your life is over. You're gonna have to live as a homeless person. So that's what I'm kind of scared of. But I don't feel I'm at that stage yet. Maybe if I'm over 50k subscribers, maybe they might kind of look at me. But I'm leaving my job in a few months anyway, so in a few months it's not going to really matter. I'm also looking to move abroad pretty soon, so if I move abroad, I'm sure I'll be fine. Just need to survive until then. But yeah, I am worried, guys. I am worried that one day somebody might knock on my door and say, you are under arrest. We need to take you away. I'm worried, but then again, I don't think I'm doing anything illegal. You've seen the people like in the Duran. They are doing the same sort of thing I'm doing. They are speaking the truth, but they've got way more. They got way more kind of subscribers compared to me. So if the FBI wanted to arrest someone, they'd probably go after Alexander first, not me. But you never know, guys. You never know. I mean, my name is on a NFO, NGO site. My name is on there, not my real name, just my channel name. My face is not on the channel yet, so it does make it a lot difficult for them to kind of track me down, find out exactly who I am. Yeah, they can know me by voice, but you can't put your voice in a paper. You can't, like all of these YouTubers out there, their faces on all these British papers and American papers. So you can't put a voice on a paper. You can put the face on a paper. You can't put a voice on the paper. So if somebody recognizes my voice, who cares? You can't put it on a paper. So yeah, end of the day, I'm still worried, guys, obviously, but I think it's important to speak the truth. I'm not scared. I think you have to speak the truth. I think it's important. And the only reason I'm not showing my face is because I don't want to lose my job, because I'm pretty sure that if I show my face, I will be sacked immediately. And that affects, obviously, my money, my livelihood. So I don't want to be doing that. I'm leaving my job in a few months, but chances are I'll probably get another job, probably not government related, something average. But who knows? If this channel does well, I can do this full time. If I'm making enough to do it full time, then I will. If not, I'll just find another job, see how it goes. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Really appreciate everyone being here. Hope you found the video interesting. Hope you found the channel interesting today. Quite an interesting chat. Lots to talk about. And appreciate all the moderators out there. And thanks for everyone who's been listening to me so far. And yeah, really thanks everyone. So yeah, there's a lot of questions here, but no super chats. Don't forget, if you want to kind of come on board, or you want to ask me a question, you got to do it via super chat, because there's so many questions to choose from. I can't really pick one. I've been talking a lot today, so I'm probably gonna finish up, guys. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.